Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, the Monotone Master, along with my co-host, Bryan, the Fantasy Foreseer. We're doing the first edition of Fantasy FMK today, Bryan, for episode 11.
Can't wait.
This is something I've been looking forward to for a while because I think it's just a fun exercise to do when it's not fantasy season. And it kind of gives us a slight edge versus our other league managers because they're not looking at this and we're kind of like seeing where guys are currently falling so we can kind of plan ahead as things unfold. You can find us on social media at TikTok and Instagram as Why You're Wrong FFB and on Twitter as You're Wrong FFB. And we've got 12 rounds of Friend, Marry, Kill because we can't say the explicit word that F normally stands for.
Let's get into it.
Cool. So we got to talk about some of the impactful news so far. Fantasy-wise, Carson Wentz has been traded to the Colts. Hurts is the QB1 in Philly. Wentz could see reunite with his OC that made him an MVP candidate in 2017. It's definitely an upgrade for both offenses in the fantasy world. We mentioned this in a future podcast that we pre-recorded, but if you had to choose Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz, who would you go with for fantasy?
I would go with Jalen Hurts just for fantasy. For team aspect,
I think the
Carson Wentz.
Yeah, the Colts will definitely be better at the end of the next season, but Jalen Hurts will get you those fantasy points. J.J. Watt's a free agent. He could probably potentially make a high-scoring defense even better for fantasy.
He actually made a tweet today saying that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
People are starting to speculate that the Buffalo Bills are his next target, but then people are also speculating that all their other teams are the powerhouse of their division. So they're all trying to make a case that J.J. Watt's going to go there, but we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Yeah, it's all fun and games for J.J. Watt at this point. Also, the Panthers are making a run at Deshaun. Is he still worth a high round pick in fantasy? If he goes to the Panthers, do you see him as a higher pick than he would be in Houston?
He's definitely higher if he goes to the Panthers, considering that they have more weapons than the Texans. But I'm not even sure if the Panthers are gonna, execute on trading for Deshaun Watson just yet.
All right, in this hypothetical situation where if Christian McCaffrey is involved in the trade and Christian McCaffrey lands in Houston, is he still the number one overall pick?
That's a tough one.
Would you go Dalvin Cook or Christian McCaffrey at that point?
I think just because Christian McCaffrey's so versatile and he can catch the ball and run. I mean, Dalvin's good. Dalvin's no doubt you could pick him number 2 or even number 1, but I'd probably still go McCaffrey just for the sole fact that the man was hurt all season, came back and dropped 35 fantasy points, which just has to show something.
And also was the number 1 fantasy player with just garbage at the quarterback the year before.
Exactly. So any team that he's on, he's going to produce probably first pick value.
All right, getting into the rules of the FMK, the rankings are provided by Fantasy Pros and we're doing half-point PPR. So the friend is a player who has a ton of hype around him, and you believe it. It's the new hotness that you want him on your team because of what he did last year or what you think he's going to do this year, and you want to see if you can try to get it. They're basically your breakout candidates at different positions. Your Marry players are a player you've had before that's always done well. He has never hurt you. He's dependable year in, year out, not including any injuries. He will help your team if you take him where you take him. And he has to have at least 2 years of proven fantasy production. And players we're killing. This player is overhyped. His name is bigger than his production. He's a good football player. He's not a good fantasy player. He will hurt your team if you take him. These are your bust candidates for 2021. So round 1 is on me. So a guy that has had 2 good years so far and someone that I've never picked, and I've never picked him because he doesn't have a lot of catching ability, but I want to be friends with Derrick Henry this season. I think if I can be his friend, if he can get to 2K rushing yards, then I want him on my football team. For guys I'd be married to, if I can get either, it'd probably be Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook. It's just kind of a toss-up if I get the first or second pick at this point.
Can't go wrong.
And it's hard to find a guy you want to kill in the first round, but for me right now, it's just the unknown of Jonathan Taylor.
My boy.
Yeah. So I know you really don't like Jonathan Taylor, so do you want to walk me to the edge of this cliff on Jonathan Taylor? Why shouldn't I take him?
You want to know why you shouldn't take Jonathan Taylor? Because Tyreek Hill is still on the board. Travis Kelce's still on the board. I might even take Zeke with Dak back instead of Jonathan Taylor. And, I mean, maybe right after that you take him, but then again, he's still got Nyheim Hines and who's the other guy on the team?
Wilkins.
Wilkins is on the team too. So, the Colts, they love their backfield. They'll split time whenever they can. If Hines having a big game, they'll roll with Hines. If Taylor's having a big game, they'll roll with Taylor. But you need that consistent guy in your lineup, like a Henry's getting the ball every touch. Christian McCaffrey's getting the ball every touch. Dalvin Cook's getting the ball. Like, it's just too much for him.
Yeah, so moving on to round 2. Who are your guys, Brian?
Well, for my friend, I got to go with my main man, Calvin Ridley. I have to choose him. He's just dominant. He's the most garbage time player you'll ever meet in your life. Julio Jones is slowly declining, and he's coming back to reality. So I expect Calvin to be a beast next year and do what he does. I got to marry Travis Kelce. Have to. I don't even know why he's going in the second round, because arguably he might be going in the first round. He's going to produce not just tight end 1 value, but he's going to produce wide receiver 1 value as well with his 25 points a game. And then to kill, sadly, I got to go. This has actually changed since we've done this, but I would kill off Miles Sanders.
Okay.
Miles Sanders is good. He's fast. He's just not amazing. He's not a good fantasy player sometimes.
Right.
I mean, some weeks he's very good. Some weeks he's pretty terrible, but I just don't see him producing, even RB2 value. I could see him more as an RB3 going into the season, but people are probably going to draft him pretty higher than that.
Yeah, I think like this previous season, there was so much hype around him finally being like the bell cow running back for the Eagles, and then he either just got hurt or they would just never give him the full load. There's always this Koi comment nonsense at the goal line, or like Boston Scott would sneak in, and Miles Sanders owners were just punching air.
And you never know, he could get hurt too, so that's another reason.
All right. Let's see. Out of all those guys, what are your thoughts on Stephon Diggs?
Stephon Diggs is a beast. I mean, with Josh Allen is 10 times better of a quarterback than Kirk Cousins. So you put Josh Allen, a gunslinger, and throws Stephon Diggs 10 targets a game. I think fantasy-wise, he probably produces wide receiver 1 numbers again. I don't know if he does what he did last year, but he definitely will still probably get like 1,400 and close to 10 touchdowns.
Right. For me, like on that list, I have to say it, like DK Metcalf is my guy, but he's not going to produce top 5 wide receiver numbers. Like for a second round, he'd be on my kill list.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think because DK and Tyler Lockett always switch off game to game, so you never really know in turn of, Stephon Diggs, who's getting targets every single game, gets his 10 targets no matter what, and probably is good for a touchdown.
Right. So moving on to round 3, my friend for round 3 is George Kittle. I've never had him. He's always going to be that tight end that puts up the closest to Travis Kelce numbers. And we've basically discussed that you want a top 3 tight end if you can, because there's such an advantage to your team. Someone I'm married to at this point is AJ Brown. He's had his rookie year and last year, fantastic receiving years. If you can get AJ Brown in the 3rd round, that's a great steal. For me, this is hard because I took him in a 1st round in a fantasy league last year. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire is my kill this year, just because you don't really know. Damian Williams is coming back. So is Clyde the one, or is he like the 1B? Like, what is that situation? And now that the whole backfield is just not great because offensive line sucks, like I'm staying away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde just not that great anyways to start with, and they love Damian Williams. Who knows if Le'Veon ends up coming back, and they could sign someone in free agent. So Clyde's had a tough rookie year. I mean, I definitely think he has potential. I just don't know if that potential is going to peak when he's on the Chiefs.
Right. It's just almost like if he was the lone guy, he'd be great, but there's a little bit too much of a crowd going on right now.
Exactly. I mean, when they were giving Kareem Hunt the ball, 20, 25 times a game, he was a beast there, but they're just not giving him the same production.
Right. All right, Brian, you got round 4.
All right, so for round 4, I would say I'm going to have to be friends with James Robinson, which is, might not meet the criteria of this. But the reason for James Robinson is because I have just so much hype over Trevor Lawrence coming in.
So James Robinson is in the 5th round, so you're overdrafting James Robinson at this point to this standard.
Oh, actually, I guess I kind of messed that up then. But yes, I would. I think that also changed too. I think he was right on the 40 slot. But yeah, no, I definitely would be friends with James Robinson. I think that, he's going to be good with Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be pretty solid. I mean, he's probably going to post similar numbers, and he'll get the rock, 20, 25 times a game. This one's tough for me, but I'll probably have to marry Darren Waller. Darren Waller is just a monster tight end. Again, top 3 tight end. Same thing with Kittle, Kelsey. You got to go with Darren Waller in that case. And then I'd have to probably kill off Julio Jones. I just can't trust Julio Jones. I had him 3 years ago. I think he led me to a championship. He caught like 300 yards in one game, but he's just not the same man. He's just too injury prone. Can't trust him.
It's once big receivers get injured, they never come back, which is shocking because Julio Jones has been such a monster, but we all know what happened to AJ Green. Like, does it blow you away that AJ Green and Julio Jones are from the same draft class? So it's almost like Julio Jones is following that path where, like, you know what he could be if healthy.
If healthy.
Right.
But we don't see that too often.
Right. So my friend for round 5 is actually James Robinson. So if you had to pick another player on this list to be your substitute friend, if you weren't overdrafting Robinson, who would it be?
I mean, I don't want to say Antonio Gibson.
Why not? Because, I'm like, I want you to say Antonio Gibson.
Exactly. I would probably go with Mike Evans just because there's rumors that Chris Godwin might end up going to the Colts and he might go to another team. So if he ends up leaving and it's just AB and Mike Evans probably will see an increase in touchdowns. It's definitely not the best to have Mike Evans on your team because he can catch 3 catches for 3 yards and 3 touchdowns. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But he does have the upside in an offense where he gets a little bit more space if Godwin's gone.
True. And that weapon room is just so crowded. There's probably like 5 guys that could all easily catch touchdowns, and the man still finished as a top 10 wide receiver on the year.
Exactly. And you take some of those guys out and he'll probably end up being a stud.
Right. So for round 5, my friend was James Robinson. So if he falls to me in round 5 at this point, I would love to take him. I think basically he's almost based a top 10, almost top 5 running back this past year on a team that had no quarterback help. So if they draft Trevor Lawrence, basically the defense has to respect the passing game more, which only makes it easier on James Robinson going forward. Someone I'm married to on this list, I've had him once. I don't have him a lot, but he basically was a top 20 wide receiver with just garbage quarterback play after week 4. But Amari Cooper in the 5th round is just outrageously a steal. Like, he's almost like a friend that you're married to at that point. Some might kill this. This is hard, but I'm killing DJ Moore here. I mean, he's talented. He'll be a top 20 wide receiver, but do I want DJ Moore in the 5th round? Or do I'm going to get the same exact production from Robbie Anderson in like another 3 rounds?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that you said you weren't going to marry the MVP of fantasy football and Josh Allen. But DJ Moore, I agree with you. I mean, he's just a yards guy. He's never really there for the touchdowns. He is a little bit injury prone. Don't know if that plays into effect. However, if Deshaun Watson comes in, could give him a little bit of upside, but still, I wouldn't trust him. And then all your other picks, yeah, I totally agree with.
So I wouldn't be married to the fantasy MVP and Josh Allen, but I'm one of those fantasy players. I don't like starting the wave of quarterbacks unless it's like I can sneak one in. Like if Josh Allen falls to me like late 5th round, I'll take him. But if I'm early 5th round, I'm much more of a fantasy player. I want to take that like running back or wide receiver who could he's on like that cusp of breaking out.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
We're going with round 6. Now guys have jumped on the board. So the thing is, this is updated consistently. So Brian's guys are off a little bit, but he's just going to be looking at the board, picking guys that he thinks fits for his categories.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get a little bit deeper down into the draft at this point, so it gets a little difficult. However, if I had to be friends with someone who I think, can put up good numbers, and I think that's actually going to be better next year because our quarterback changed, I think that Cooper Kupp actually is going to be pretty good. Stafford loves his little slant routes, his little 5-yard hitches and whatnot. And that's what Cooper Kupp really, excels at. So I think that he's going to be pretty solid next year. Someone I'd have to marry, it's got to be Kyler Murray, most likely.
Right.
I like my quarterbacks. I like the quarterbacks. If you can get a good one early, do it. If you're in that middle tier quarterback, you might want to wait for someone even lower than that because you want to take someone more high valued and like a wide receiver or running back. But definitely marry Kyler Murray. He's a stud. He's going to put up 30 points for you. And then if I had to kill someone, just get Ronald Jones out of there.
I was about to say Ronald Jones.
I don't even know why Ronald Jones is even that high up in the rankings. He's not even the starter on his team.
Right.
I mean, if you want him to get a 99-yard touchdown in week 8, he might win you your fantasy game. Other than that, he's probably going to lose you every other game besides that.
If it was just Ronald Jones in that backfield, would you still want to kill him or would you take him?
Well, Brady loves his running backs, which is a good thing, but I just see him as a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 if he's by himself in the backfield, but I wouldn't take him.
Right. For moving on to round 7, so I was kind of split here for who I wanted to be friends with. I mean, he's more of a Mary kind of guy, but with this past season, you're like, I don't really know about this now, but Tyler Lockett. He had one of those seasons, finished as a top 10 wide receiver, but extremely inconsistent. This dude's going to get you 40 points or he's going to get you 5 points. But if I can get that kind of guy in round 7 and just have Tyler Lockett, a potential top 10 wide receiver, as my flex, I'm pretty pumped about that. Or another wide receiver too, CeeDee Lamb. Finished with the same kind of quarterback play that Dalton, who was DiNucci. Still finished as a wide receiver 20 on the year. So as number 2, finishing as wide receiver 20, if Dak comes back, getting a CD in round 7 would be awesome. And my Mary category is also Dak Prescott. If I can get a dude who's on pace for 500 points before he went down to injury in round 7 as my quarterback, that's when I'd take a quarterback if he falls to me right there. Or even maybe if it's middle of round 6, I would overdraft Dak Prescott there. And the guy I'm killing is Juju Smith-Schuster. Every single year, he hurts you. He's hurt me ever since I took him in the second round of fantasy 2 years ago. If you took him in round 4 last year, you probably weren't thrilled with him either. And round 7 might be like that kind of year where like, okay, Juju might be my flex player, but he's option number 3 on his team at this point. And that's even if he stays with the Steelers.
Juju is he's just a mess, honestly. Ben Roethlisberger is just not good either. I don't even know why they even brought him back. I would definitely kill off Juju. And then CD and Dak, I think, are great picks. I think you can't go wrong with either or.
All right, Brian, round 8.
All right. Well, for round 8, if I had to choose a friend, I would have to probably go with, it pains me to say, but I'll probably go with Dallas Goedert. I think that Dallas Goedert actually is better than Noah Fant. I don't know why Noah Fant's ranked higher than him. But I think that if Zach Ertz does leave Philly and Jalen Hurts, is that type of mobile quarterback, kind of runs out of the pocket, has to dump it off to his tight end. He was seeing like 8 to 10 targets. I think you can't go wrong with Dallas Goedert. There's definitely a lot of worse tight ends out there, so I'll be his friend.
Okay.
If I had to marry someone, I don't want to say it, but I'll probably have to say Russell Wilson.
Interesting.
He will give me those 30-point games, which is key. And I think that, he's had so many seasons in a row that he's sucked so bad that he's got to turn it around at some point and produce a championship winning team. And when you have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, it's kind of difficult not to do that. So I'll go Russell Wilson. I know you probably love that.
Makes me really happy inside, Brad.
And then to kill him, I mean, I think it's just a no-brainer at this point. It's a Zach Moss, Singletary combo.
Get him out of here. Get both out of here.
It's just a combo right there. They are RB4s, maybe even RB5.
Do you know who the starting running back is for the Buffalo Bills, Brian?
There is none. I don't think.
I was going to say it's Josh Allen.
Yeah, it is Josh Allen. You're right.
I was about to say there's 2 guys I want to speculate like in this range that I know you've had one of them, but what are your thoughts on A.J. Dillon and Myles Gaskin?
Myles Gaskin, I heard that Aaron Jones might go to the Dolphins, and I'm starting to believe that it might actually happen. So if that's the case, then Myles Gaskin won't be fantasy relevant. However, if he's not, then Myles Gaskin can produce low-end RB2 value. And then on the flip side with A.J. Dillon, I mean, he's good. He's big. He's not that fast, but I'm just worried to see how they use Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon.
Right.
Will Jamal start? Will A.J. start? Is it really worth them to have it as like an RB2? Probably not.
Definitely, it's not like different tiers of talent wise, but A.J. Dillon has the same physical size as Derrick Henry. He just doesn't have the street cred yet. So I can feel like it's one of those years where you have a Derrick Henry-sized human being, but there's this other guy named DeMarco Murray from years before. Now this is Jamal Williams. It's going to be in the way. You just want the breakout to happen. The guy in front of him just needs to get out of the picture.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, round 9. I want to be friends with Justin Herbert. If I'm in round 9 and I haven't picked a quarterback yet and Justin Herbert is sitting right there, I'm going to take him. Another guy I want to be friends with in round 9, Damian Harris. I think since the Pats are moving on from Cam Newton and they need that consistent run game, Damian Harris has showed he's the best runner out of all the Patriots running backs. So if I'm sitting there in round 9, I might flirt or tilt to Damian Harris. Someone I'd be married to in this round, I want to go with Jarvis Landry just because he has such a great connection with Baker Mayfield, much better than he has with Odell Beckham. So if I need someone that to throw into my flex and I don't know what to do, Jarvis Landry isn't going to disappoint me if he's having a good game or there's no extreme weather going on in Cleveland. Someone I'm killing off from this list is Devontae Parker. It really just depends what's going on in that quarterback room. But at this moment, if Tua is the starter, I want nothing to do with Parker. If Fitzpatrick could have been the starter, Parker's amazing.
Yeah, I owned Devontae Parker, and I know how frustrating it is with Tua in the center. But he was getting like 7-6 points, like not great. I do agree with Damian Harris. You know, Patriots usually don't pay running backs, and they let their rookies go for like 2-3 years. It's kind of like the main guy in that backfield. So I think he'll have a pretty solid season. And then who's your Mary?
My Mary was Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis is solid. I mean, depending on where Odell goes, if he comes back or not, I think Jarvis still gets his production no matter what. So I think it was pretty good picks.
Right. Would you also be killing off Devontae? I mean, you just basically double down on Devontae, killing off Devontae.
I would definitely kill him off. So going into round 10, if I had to choose a friend, it's getting tough at this point because we're so far in the draft.
You're basically taking your friends or those breakout potential candidates. You're just taking deep shots on the draft.
Yeah, I would probably choose Robbie Anderson as a friend, solely just for the speculation that if Deshaun Watson does come, I know we've mentioned it a couple times in the podcast, but if he does come, that makes Robbie Anderson that much better. I think he's got a slight edge on, maybe not a slight edge, but, a little bit of a decrease than DJ Moore, but he catches more touchdowns than him, which is kind of beneficial for, a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, wherever you want to take him. If I had to marry someone, I think I got to marry Joe Burrow, honestly. Joe Burrow, I think, is going to be a monster this season. I think before his injury, he was throwing for 400 yards, like 3 touchdowns. I think the Bengals are a lot better than they were in the past, so I'm definitely going with Joe Burrow there. And then and also Jerry Jeudy too. I can't leave him out of there. Jerry Jeudy's a beast also.
All right, so let me just ask you a quick question. Because for Mary, you need at least 2 years of proven production. Those were both rookies last year.
Well, I mean, right now, who am I going to marry? Am I going to marry Tariq Cohen?
What about Ryan Tannehill?
Ryan Tannehill, he's all right. I could take Ryan Tannehill. He's going to get me 16 points one week, but he's going to get me 24 the other. I guess I'll marry Ryan Tannehill just for the 2 years of production.
What blows me away about people's thoughts on Ryan Tannehill is no one wants to draft this man. He was a top 10 quarterback this year. Yet because everyone's just he doesn't basically chuck it for 400 yards a game, everyone's scared to take him.
Corey Davis also might be leaving too, so that just leaves A.J. Brown and Jonnu Smith. I mean, I like Ryan Tannehill. I think he's a great winner. I think he does well handing the ball off. He's got good form handing the ball off to Derrick Henry.
Fantastic form.
But I don't know if that form helps you in fantasy football.
That form helps amazingly when the entire defense believes that form is so great that they go to try to tackle Derrick Henry and then boom, surprise. Who has the ball in the end zone? It's Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. Ryan Tannehill, he's a solid quarterback. Not the best, but he's solid. And he goes unslept in every single draft. So going back to it, if I had to kill someone, I mean, I think it goes without saying that Tony Pollard probably will not repeat what he did last year in a full season with Dak and Zeke. I do like Tony Pollard. He is a good running back. They just will not give him the carries when they have a full healthy team. So I'd have to take him out.
Okay. Would you, if you are the Zeke owner, do you still stash him on your bench just in case?
Yeah, no, you definitely have to as a handcuff for sure. I mean, it's the same thing, with Madison and Cook and Latavius Murray and Kamara. It's like you need Pollard to be able to, in case Zeke does go down later in the year.
Right. So going into round 11, you just mentioned his name, but the guy I want to be friends with in round 11, if I miss my shot on one of the top tight ends, I want to go with Jonnu Smith. Basically, number 10 on the top 10 tight ends this past year. If you lose Corey Davis, that's vacated targets. Jonnu Smith, very physical, very good tight end. He's not a blocking tight end. He's more of a catching tight end, I believe. So he'll only get more targets going forward. So if I don't know who to take in round 11, I'll take my shot on Jonnu Smith. I'm married to Matthew Stafford. Last season was rough, but he's had consistent seasons. He's probably the typical king of the late round quarterback strategy. And I think going into the Los Angeles system, they're going to basically have him air the ball out. Better, more run team. So I think it's only going to go up for Matthew Stafford. Someone I'm killing is Darrell Henderson. I think the end of last season showed Cam Akers is the guy. Malcolm Brown they're just going to keep because he's such a RB2. I think Darrell Henderson is going to be only useful if Cam Akers goes down to injury.
Yeah, I mean, those are also my picks as well. I think Darrell Henderson's no longer that starting running back anymore. Cam Akers is fully taken over. And Jonnu Smith, if Corey Davis leaves too, we'll see more targets. And, with the great passing skills of Ryan Tannehill and that top 5 QB production, you might be getting lucky with Jonnu Smith.
I said top 10. Top 5's a little outrageous for Ryan Tannehill. Come on.
Yeah, a little bit. God.
You're ending the round 12, Brian.
This is incredible, honestly.
Can we just take a second and laugh at the fact that Le'Veon Bell is 111 right now?
Why is Le'Veon Bell even in there? Can I even go further down the list if that's a friend?
If you want to go further down the list, you can go further down the list.
I might go further down the list. I think Wait, Friends, does it have to be 2 years or is it?
Friends is a breakout. Mary is 2 years. Friends is the breakout new hotness. You want basically your rookie or like player that had one good fantasy season so far and you think he's going to continue. All
right. Well, I watch a lot of college football and I know how good these guys are, but if I had to choose a friend, it's definitely a toss up between Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. Etienne was a monster at Clemson. I think that no matter where he goes, he's going to be a dual threat running back. He's going to be able to catch the ball and run the ball. He was catching like 100 yards a game as a running back at Clemson. So I think he can do that as well. Najee is more of like a hard runner. I think if he gets drafted by Pittsburgh, is which they're projecting him to go right now, with that offensive line, I think that he could probably go for at least 1,200, maybe 1,300 yards in his first season, which is pretty good for, an RB3, RB4 on your bench stash. And he could emerge to an RB1 too. You never know. He has that type of talent. If I had to marry someone on this list, I probably wouldn't marry any of them, to be honest. But
would you be taking defense in round 12? Like, would you pick your favorite defense?
Yeah, see, you probably would take your defense at this point. There's a lot of good defenses out there, so it's kind of tough to pick. But just going off this list, I'd probably marry Marvin Jones just for the consistency level of, if he goes to the Patriots, maybe that could boost, a little bit with if
become the Patriots wide receiver 1.
Could be the Patriots wide receiver 1, could go to another team that he becomes like a wide receiver 2. Marvin Jones is slept on every year in every draft, and he usually produces decent fantasy numbers. And when he's given the opportunity to be the wide receiver 1, he always capitalizes. So I would probably take Marvin Jones there. And then to kill off, he's not even that bad, but I got to kill off Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley is just the most... he's a walking injury. So yeah. I don't know how you could even trust Todd Gurley at this point. If you draft him in fantasy football, you know what you're signing up for, and I apologize for you taking him because your season is probably over.
Right. Let's just talk about some of the names sitting around here because it's a mix of guys. It's interesting that it's either the dudes that have fallen from grace or these guys that's in the middle of the mix. So how do you feel about Jamal Williams at 114? Jamal Williams at 114, or would you rather A.J. Dillon at 71?
Considering all the hype around A.J. Dillon, and he was getting a lot more carries when Aaron Jones went down, kind of towards the end of the season, I'd probably take A.J. Dillon over Jamal Williams. However, it's at the point where, you have to draft Jamal Williams just for the sole fact that he could be the starter to start the season, and we don't know. But hopefully that information will be, released before, fantasy draft day comes.
Right.
I also like Laviska Shenault too. I think that Laviska Shenault was a real solid rookie, and with Trevor Lawrence coming in, I think he could see a huge upside this year.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other guys like Logan Thomas. If you haven't taken a tight end here, good pick. If you haven't gotten quarterback yet, and you can Jalen Hurts in the 12th or 13th round, stash him on your bench. So there's just a bunch of guys that they're all just bench players to really just fill out your roster. You're just looking at breakouts, but as the season gets closer, we'll go a little bit further into these drafts. Maybe get to around 14, 15 just to fully round it out. This is really just a test to see how this plays out, just a really basically a good fantasy homework kind of situation. So just make sure to like, subscribe, and share. I know you do that all the time, Brian. I keep seeing you pop up on my phone.
Of course.
It's never too early to start working towards the next year. You just got to follow the news every few weeks. And do you have any last remarks, Brian?
No, I think that's it.